It's those little things that keep me finding my way back to the Orange County line.
So my license is a licensed clinical social worker. You know, there are things that you can utilize that title for. There are things you shouldn't, and really, this type of this type of communication is one where I do not feel comfortable utilizing the Indiana licensed clinical social work title. So the information that I provide, the storytelling with purpose that I talk about, is really based on all those years of experience. Yes, I have a doctorate of social work, absolutely. That does play into the importance and even the uniqueness of my storytelling. But this is not medical advice. This is not therapeutic advice. This is storytelling with purpose. So please, if medical or professional mental health care is needed, then that is certainly something that needs to be addressed in a more formal environment. Hello, and welcome to The Why with Dr. T, storytelling with a purpose. This episode just might be the first one. We have recorded the first episode 3 times and cannot settle on a good one. But this one could be it. So my goal is to bring people together through good stories about family, relationships, and community connections. Most importantly, though, is to remind all of us that we are better together. So, what better way to start a podcast than is talking about the relationship that is absolutely the most important to me? So, our 30-year relationship, with 27 years of that being married. So, I want to introduce you to my husband, Chris, and we're going to talk a little bit about what it takes to have a relationship that lasts that long. What do you think our success so far?
Well, it's hard to just say, well, this is what's made us successful in staying married. It's just it's a, you know, it's an entire lifestyle. But the main thing of to stay married for 30 years is, well, I think is first off, not being derogatory and towards one another. Like we've never cussed each other. We don't do that kind of stuff.
Mm-mm.
And I think that's something that when people start that, you create it's a downward spiral. You lose respect for one another, and probably just the ability to plan ahead a little bit and think of a broader picture. It's easy to live day to day and get caught up in your emotions and blow the whole thing up when you're being emotional. But if you can develop the ability just to stop for sometimes just a minute and think about your next move, you can broaden your horizons, not only with just your marriage but your entire life. But so there's always times when somebody just wants to blow the whole thing up. But if you learn to step back for just a minute and reevaluate and realize that you did say that you would do this forever until death do us part, and you want to stick with that and just take a breath and move forward. But so just a few. That's just a few things. But you always hear the old adage to never go to bed mad. Well, there's a lot to that. People who were married for decades come up with that kind of stuff. There's a lot of truth in that, and that relates back to the not being derogatory and dismissive of one another. And even when you want to, even when you're mad and you want to do all that sort of stuff, just just be nice, even when you don't want to be. And that's not only with your spouse, that's the general public you encounter. Be nice even when you don't want to be.
At least try to be kind
Yeah.
as best that you can. I think that as we've aged, we've gotten better at that. I don't think it's
Yes.
always kind of been that
Yes.
way. You know.
Well, mostly me, but if somebody was voted most likely to lose their temper and have a fit, it would be me, I'm sure. But it's just it's it's part of aging and growing up, and then seeing the value in what you have, and that stuff comes quicker to some than others, but it's a every day's something different, and you're always a work in progress. I mean, our marriage is better today than it was last year, and it was better then than it was 2 years before that. It just gets better all the time if you keep working at it, and like I say, everybody you age a little bit, and you learn and you tone down, and that just makes things better. But the thing is, and I think this is a societal problem that we're locked in right now. Everybody's attention span is like so small, and it's the same way with relationships. Well, something's not going like you want, just move on to the next thing, and that's just a problem that we're in a fast-paced society, and you can't be like that with your marriage. Even when you want to, you can't. You've got to say, take a step back, take a breath, and then reevaluate and move forward. You have to stick to the commitment.
You and I, we've talked about that quite a bit on the two things that you've done religiously.
Yeah.
Is marriage and stretches.
Yeah, stretches. Yeah.
every day.
But in the thing is, like, and you could say that, and makes it sound simple, but no matter how much you work at it, there are going to be days when you've got issues, or you create problems for yourself, or and it's not easy. I mean, we've had a great marriage, but obviously we've had times too when we're like, what the hell,
Yeah.
And the to me, the difference in almost anything, the difference between success and failure are the people that just say, yesterday was crap and I didn't like it, but I'm doing this, and I'm going to get up and I'm going to do it again tomorrow. And then if it's crap tomorrow, that's okay. I'm going to get up and do it the next day, and just keep slogging forward. And things will work out if you'll do that. And we're talking about marriage, but that's just a metaphor for life. If you get up, you don't have to do anything fancy, but if you'll get up and do something every day and just keep going forward, your life will be better. And that's the same way with your marriage, any kind of relationship you're in, your work, no matter what it is, those things will get better if you just stick with it and keep trying to move forward and better yourself a little bit every day. You don't have to do anything fancy, but you need to do something every day.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same stuff we talk about this stuff a lot,
We do.
And but and some of it sounds sappy or whatever, but it's just true. It's just what it takes to keep to stay married and to keep progressing in life. In your professional field and your emotional field, anything, you just have to keep going forward. So.
I think we've been really fortunate to figure out how to obtain those resources to make those things better, to deal with emotions better, make better decisions, and we've just been so fortunate to be able to just have that mindset growth all the time, and maybe even to think about more than just ourselves.
Yeah. And I think the kids too, having the kids having the kids is what really brought us together, and then it's been something that's our tie that binds is those children,
Yeah.
and and that's not so there's a lot of people who don't have kids, but I think you have to find some commonality. So if it's not kids in your relationship, you have to find something, whether it be your work or your philosophy on on life. You have to have some core value that brings you together. And when you find out what that is, you need to focus on that and keep you guys keep yourselves close. So
Yeah. And I think originally the kids were at
right, they were it for
100%.
us. They were
100%.
for
And
us.
then as we moved and aged and grew and grew professionally, and we branched out and have done a lot of things
Yeah.
over the last 30 years, but our kids have been our anchor. So, and like you said, it doesn't have to be a kid, but it needs to be something.
Yeah.
It needs to be something that ties people together and creates that layer of relationship every day.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have friends that don't have kids, but if you start looking at them, you'll see something. Like like I said, it's their motive in life is to get out and help and educate other people, and then you see them come together around something like that, and that becomes it's theirs, it's their little thing. That's what keeps them focused and together and keeps them moving forward. So yeah, it doesn't. In our case, it was children. It doesn't have to be children, but I think that um, you have to have some little commonality that you guys can that you as a couple can focus on and coalesce around.
Yeah, I think so.
Did you guys struggle at all when you had your first kid, like giving time to each other? Because me and my wife have found that, like when we had Cora, starting off, we didn't realize it, but like you kind of, it becomes less about
Yeah.
you guys and more obviously more about the baby. Do you guys struggle with that at all?
Yeah, I think that's pretty common. Anybody, you're young, you have kids, and it's not just the kids. It's it just becomes another mouth to feed. So there's that is induced stress of we've got to get out and we've got to make a living, not for ourselves, but now we've got this baby to take care of, and it just adds a little more weight on your shoulders. And we struggled a lot when we were younger because neither of us come from money. So not only did we had a little one to take care of, we had to get out and
We didn't have much.
we had to get out and make a living. And Brandy was going to school, and in our first several years, it felt like just kind of like we were all existing as in one space, but maybe weren't together like we should be. But it's just something that you have to work on, and one of the I don't have a lot of regrets in life, and I really say I don't regret anything. We just because we all whatever path leads us here, it was meant to be. So, but if I could say that I regretted something in life, it would probably be with my older kids not getting to spend more quality time with them because you're like I said, you're just out slogging, you're trying to make a living and keep it all together, and you don't give your spouse the attention that they deserve, and you probably don't give your kids the attention that they deserve. And you know it's tough on the first one. It gets a little better with the second one. Now we're here with the third one, and it's just like we're hitting on all cylinders. And you feel a little bit of the guilt, because it's like, man, this third one here, we've got to give it our all. And I just
we
wish,
knew more.
Yeah, you're just
we knew how to control things more. We were financially better. We had more skill as parents, and we always kind of said that our oldest daughter will get a little bit more in the will, and we also didn't have the resources at the time too. So we were all really growing up together, and like you said, it gets better as we move.
So there, you've probably heard the saying that no kid grows up with the same parents or in the same house, and there's a lot of truth to that because like our youngest gets away with stuff that if he had tried when we were 20, it wouldn't have worked out for him. And I think that's the case whether you're 20 or 30 or 40. all your kids get a different you in their experience.
And but I think too, if we look at our middle kid, if we look at her and see that things were getting a little better, we were able to handle things a little better, and it was kind of, our discipline was getting to be different. And and then with Christian, our last child, is like, okay, now we just might somewhat have it together a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, it's like anything. If I ask you to draw me a picture and gave you 3 attempts, the third one would be better than the first one. And that's that's just you growing as a parent. You just get better with each one, and or I feel like you do. I mean, maybe some people don't, but we know we have been try to be forward thinking and learn from our mistakes. And I think that's anybody that's got that mindset on your third attempt of anything, it's going to be better than your first attempt.
Yeah, and I do think that for me, what has helped is there's not really a playbook or an instruction manual for parenting, but there are things that help. And I think just me being in the profession that I've been in for so long, there's so much information. It's just, do we pay attention to it or not? Do we apply it to ourselves? So there's all kinds of parenting programs, curriculums, information, internet information, books you can read, and it's important to be able to sift through that information and figure out what does work, and kind of always have that growth mindset of, because some information's there, we can learn how to think different.
I mean,
too.
Actually, there are handbooks, but that's kind of the problem, because that relates back to what we were saying about no child has the same parents or grows up in the same house, because people a lot of times they rely on this information. Somebody gives them information, and they rely on it, and sometimes they miss the fact that it's the same thing with this person. They're writing about the experience that they can relate to,
right?
And maybe if that person that wrote that 10 years from now, they may have a different take on that.
Right.
In the same way, you've got a different child than the person we're putting the information out. You have a different situation in life, and it is tough for people to sit through all that, but and figure out what's the best for them. And that's just, I think that anybody, the more kids you raise, the better that you're going to get at it. But the thing is just to strive to do your best with every one of them. We're as we go on and unfold our little story here. So we're talking through the children raising business. We're about to get out of that. We've got 2 done grown up and flew the coop, and we've got the last one is a senior and signed up into the military, leaves in July. So we're getting ready to enter that phase of life, the empty nesters, and see what that brings for us.
That's going to be a lot of change. Although we've prepared, I think, for it. I mean, we've always raised our kids that that's their job, is to get out and do something, leave the nest. But when the reality of it, when they're all 3 gone, I think that's going to be another transition.
Yeah, for sure. Well, especially, you grew up like we did. I grew up with a ton of siblings, so it's like I've been, when you grow up in a big house with a lot of siblings and younger siblings around, you're raising babies from when you can start packing one around and changing diapers. Well, here you go, it's your turn. So you just go through your entire life kind of raising babies, and then the thought of one day waking up and there's none around. We've got the grandkids that come by, but it's just to not have any under your roof is a different sort of thing. But I don't know. I would say that I'm looking forward to a new adventure, but I'm not really. I am going to miss that part of it. I'm anxious to see how the transition goes for us, But you're right. We've always told our kids, that they're always welcome at the house, but you need to get up and do something every day, and you need to work and come up with a plan and get out there and hustle and do your thing. And they have took our advice because none of them have hung around very long. They're all they get out of school and they take off and pursue their own little thing, and they've done well. And Christian coming up as the third one, he's said already signed. We know that he's already signed up for the Navy and leaving in July, and so he's following suit with his sisters, ready to take off and hit the ground running. But and I'm proud of him for that. I think that you know, I think we're in this. I think we're in a phase in society where we tell everybody, not to be in a hurry and don't worry about all that sort of stuff. But I don't know. Sometimes I feel like it's not the right message for folks. I think that sometimes you need to let people know, and you may have a different opinion on this. You probably do, but I think it's really important that everybody hits the ground running. Whether it's first thing in the morning or when you're getting out of school. You need to get up, get moving, and go make something happen. And so you have preach that all the time. You need to do something every day. It doesn't have to be anything spectacular, but you need to show some forward movement every day, and life turns out a lot better for you when you do that. I feel like.
Yeah, no, I don't think I disagree at all. I think that maybe there's nuances there, but no, I think you're exactly right. We need to, raise kids to be able to go out and make it in the world. Now, there's a big long stretch on what I guess is appropriate or not appropriate there, but I think that the goal is to make children functionable so that they can take care of themselves the best way that they can, so that they do get up and do something every day. Absolutely. I think that's just imperative. And I think we've always kind of told our kids that if, when you graduate high school, it's work, college, or military, but you're not sitting at home upstairs or in the basement. I mean, you're doing something.
Got to go do something. You got to go do something every day. You need to go do something.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to always tell them. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to be anything big. But you need to do something every day. And I think that just, it just starts to develop the skills it takes to be an adult. Because if you're going to be even a semi-successful adult, you've got to have a little bit of motivation, and not really motivation, but more dedication. You've got to have a little bit of discipline and get up and go, because motivated. If you're motivated, that means you're doing things when you're motivated, when you feel like it. But dedication and discipline, that's when you have to get up every day, whether you feel like it or not. You have obligations, and that's where discipline comes in. Just to get up and put your boots on, put your feet on the floor, and get up and go, even on the days that you don't want to. And like I said, that's something I see as raising kids, that I see as a little bit of a problem. We let kids cut in and out for this and that, just kind of small minor things. But when you do that, I feel like you're kind of caving in and capitulating a little bit, and you're not teaching the discipline that you need to keep kids moving forward as successful adults, in my opinion.
Well, I think we're pretty much in line, with that. Just consider, like last week when Christian texted and said, "I've been sick for 3 days. I'd like to come home at noon." Like, nope, you're going to keep your butt at school.
Yeah.
Because you're already there. You're there. It's noon. It's just a few more hours, and there's no point in that. So stick it out.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we need to do a lot of times. Now, I'm not saying that there's not times when that's not necessary, not at all. But for the most part, I think it is important to get up and go every day. I remember when I was working, at community mental health. I mean, you only had so many days you could miss. I mean, and having three kids, I mean, you were doing a lot of different things, and there was no ability to call in sick. I mean, you just didn't have the luxury of that, and you have to work.
And we had 3 kids, and a lot of people don't know this, but you actually, you went to work, you got your bachelor's degree, you worked while you were getting your bachelor's degree, you got your bachelor's degree. We're raising 2 kids at the time. This is before Christian came along. and you were driving 2 and 3 days a week to Evansville,
Evansville.
plus working 40 hours a week
Yes.
because we had to have the insurance.
Yes.
So you got your master's degree while you were still working full time, and
Yeah. Yeah.
nobody cut you any slack at the house. We needed 3 squares and laundry done and all that.
Yeah.
And in the same way with your doctor, we had maybe a little more free time when you got your doctorate, just because
COVID.
COVID, and Christian was the only one
older.
at the house. But
It was still terrible.
yeah, but you worked it the entire time
Yeah.
that you've worked into having a doctorate. You've worked full time while doing that.
I remember, this has stuck with me. So going to USI for my master's degree, and I was in the 2-year track, because I had no clue that getting a bachelor's of social work would cut a year off of your master's. But anyway, I drove there. So for the first semester, I had to drive there 3 days a week, and then it moved down to 2. But that was a 5-hour-a-day commute from the house. And do you remember when I graduated and everybody had to come to the graduation in Evansville?
Yeah.
And I remember hearing, well, that drive was terrible from you.
Yeah.
That's one time.
I never knew until I drove down there, and I was like, "What the hell? I mean, what's going on here?"
That was 2 years.
I'll be honest. I could not imagine doing that 3 times a week,
It was
and then
terrible.
that's after work and on a weekend. I think you had 2 weekday classes, and then on a Saturday you drive down.
No, well, yeah, for one, but then I had practicum on Saturdays.
Yeah.
So, I was working every Saturday, and then the time change, which was terrible because Eastern and Central time, and it was a nightmare. And I ended up with my schedule. I would see clients in Crawford County on the way home because I could get to Crawford County first, and I could work a few hours before I actually came home after spending all day at school just to get 40 hours.
Yeah.
It was so unbelievably hard.
Yeah. It was. I managed to block a lot of it out. I don't know how you handled it, but it was rough days, even for us at home.
Even the kids were tired of pigs in the blanket. They still complain about that. Nobody will eat them now.
Pigs in a blanket. That's what we had those on the nights, so we didn't have beanies and weenies.
That's true.
But they made it. They survived.
But yeah, it was just them at the time, and but we made it. It was we always had choices, but we really didn't have any choice. We had to do it if we wanted to be something, do something.
You didn't have a choice.
If you wanted to improve your life and break cycles and be different, then we had no choice.
Yeah.
If that was what our goal was.
Yep.
You remember Gracie she was 2 at the time, and she was diagnosed with leg herpes. So when we weren't doing all that stuff, she had physical therapy and doctor's appointments and in Louisville, and all kinds of things, just all the time. It just never stopped.
Yep.
Never stopped.
Yeah. And our story is not all that unusual, because you talk to, and so many of our friends and people that you talk to, like, they lay out how they got here or there, and they start going through all the stuff that they've had to go through to get there. Then you look at it and you're like, how does anybody make it this day and age? As tight as everything is in this world, and when you look at a lot of the stories, you're thinking, man, how does anybody make it? You're just so fortunate so fortunate to even to get here and have anything, much less we've been super fortunate. And you look back on it, you're like, man, how did all this come to fruition? But and it seems impossible, but if you keep going back to what we were talking about the getting up and doing things,
something every day.
Even when you don't want to, you get up and go, and that's the attitude that makes it all happen.
So they always say, like, your kids are who they are, no matter what. Did you guys ever catch yourselves trying to mold them into who you wanted them to be, or did you do a good job of just trying to teach them values, and then just let them be who they were.
You want to take that?
Yeah. So I think that goes back to what we were talking about. You know, when you're younger, I feel like that you're more likely. No, when you're younger, you have this whole concept of the way everything is and the way the world is, and so you want to raise your kids, and they're going to fit in, like you say, in this mold that you've got. And the older you get, if you've got any sense at all, the older you get, the more you'll find out that this little ball you've created that with all everything in it, it just starts falling apart because you realize that a lot of times things aren't the way that you think they are. People aren't the way that you think that they're going to be or should be, and a lot of people that you come across aren't what you thought they were. And it's the same way with your kids. So you try to put them in this little ball, and then the older you get, the more you realize. So this is BS, and just be good to the kid and let them become what they're going to become. The only thing that you can do is teach them, give them a good moral compass, teach them right from wrong, and uh, really the chips are just going to fall where they may after that. You 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 can only do so much as a parent, and I see a lot of people, and again, it seems like I have a lot of these opinions because I guess that's why I'm opinionated, I guess. But so I see a lot of people, and they really try to, their mother hen their kids to death and nursemaid them along, and I think it's so detrimental to a child when you do that. I feel like that you like I said, you've got to give them a moral compass, teach them right from wrong, let them know that you love them and you're there when you need them, and then it just gets to a point where you've got to let them go and explore some on their own, and become the person that they're going to become. You'll worry yourself to death, and you'll do harm to that child if you try too hard, I think. So that's and I see this a lot of people that what I call mother henning a kid to death, and they just they you turn you can turn these boys into mama's boys, and you can turn you can turn these girls into something that you don't want them to be. You want to teach you want your kids to know that you love them, but at the same time, like you you can't just wait on them hand and foot. You can't do everything for them. You've got to teach them some responsibilities, and teach them to have a little bit of get up and go. And you know you, you have to learn that when they get out in the real world, like mom's not going to run and buy them Starbucks in the morning. I mean, you're going to have to, they want something, they're going to have to get out and go earn it themselves. The same way with these boys out here. I mean, you know, you get to a certain age and a point in life where mom and dad aren't not going to buy you a new truck to go mudding in on Saturday night or that sort of stuff. You're responsible for yourself, and you need to start that young with these kids. You don't have to be hardcore with them, but you've got to start them down that path of self sufficiency and discipline, or you're going to wake up one day and you're going to have a bunch of 50-year-old children living in your basement. And I don't think that that's the way that, I don't think that that's what most people want. And I don't think that's the way that things should be.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's, moms and dads probably approach that somewhat different. I think that mother hen and a kid is just as bad as being overly harsh on them too. I think that there's a medium there that kind of works, and I think that the years that we're able to keep moving, keep growing, keep figuring out what works with the child that you have right there is the most important thing. I think that it's again, it goes back to what we're saying is we have to set some ground rules, some boundaries, some expectations, and then kids have to learn to roll in that. And I think that we have gotten a lot better when we have certain household rules, and when those rules are not kept, there's a consequence, but it is not too lacking or too harsh. It's kind of right there in the middle of having a good consequence that produces better outcomes. And I think that that is really important, to have those set family rules, those consequences. And one of the things that as we kind of end this episode, one of the things that makes me think of is we've always said, if you need mom and dad, no matter what your age is, financially, you're not an adult. You're going to follow household rules. And the day that you don't need us in those ways, if we're not paying your car payment, your insurance, your phone, your tuition, whatever, then you're an adult. But until then, if you're 20 and we're helping you out, you abide by family rules. Which is be respectful, have a job, work towards something, try to be a good steward of people, and don't be causing any trouble. And then however you grow up to be, that's on you. That's a good thing. So I think that as we've aged, we really do try to not fit the kids in the mold that we think they need to be in. It's more guiding. Now, they would all three probably tell you different.
Yeah. Well, like I said, everybody's reality is different, Everybody's reality.
They probably think we are complete overbearing hags. I am sure of it. But I think from our perspective, and as we see our growth, it's different. And we still have to have protective boundaries for our children. We do.
And as we're wrapping this episode up, I think it's important to remember, too, that I'm trained in nothing, and anything I say could be wrong. And Brandy is the expert on all this, on all things. So we should throw a disclaimer on anything that I say or may say in the future.
Yeah. So if he has honked you off, we're going to apologize now.
Yeah. I found that I have a lot of opinions when somebody gets to talking to me. If they give me the platform to talk, I'll do it and voice my opinions. So.
Well, I appreciate you being here. And I really felt like this was the right way to go with the first podcast. Because if we're going to talk about the importance of relationship and community and the things that we all have in common, it has to start with you and me.
Well, yeah, and I think too, as you're so you've got, obviously you've started this podcast. You've got a lot of people that you want to have on, but like you said, you wanted to kind of start with family and community, and it starts with us. But I think that is important too to people see the dynamics and the difference in people, and they also when we're doing this, and I say I'm throwing opinions out there and stuff, it gives them a sense of foundation on who they are listening to and the information that they're taking from it. So.
Yeah. And that is one thing that with the ending of this episode is important, is to know that this is why I wanted to do something like this, because I feel like we have a lot to offer. We've really been through 30 years together, and we've been together longer than we were apart as kids. We
got together. We were 19 years old.
Yeah. So I feel like that's where the relationship story, the storytelling with purpose has to start with us. Yeah. So that ends our first episode. Hope that you enjoyed it. Hope you stick around for other episodes. Thank you.